This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. CBS News has been told tonight that in a major Middle East policy decision and a major change of policy, President Reagan now has ordered his administration to open a formal U.S. dialogue with the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Secretary of State George Shultz reportedly is about to make the official announcement at the State Department. We expect him to do that shortly, and we'll go live for that announcement. Within the past 24 hours, Reagan aides said PLO leader Yassar Arafat's UN speech in Geneva did not go far enough to meet U.S. conditions for any dialogue and was too ambiguous. But Arafat held a follow-up news conference during today, an attempt to clarify his position. He also implied that he has now gone as far as he thinks he can go in making concessions. Now, to give you background and perspective, here's Tom Fenton in Geneva.
Arafat tonight warned the United States and Israel not to push him any further, to stop making demands for more concessions from the PLO.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
He restated in what he believed are clear and unambiguous terms his position on the main conditions set by the U.S. for opening a dialogue with the PLO.
And the right of all parties concerned in the Middle East conflict to exist in peace and security. And as I have mentioned, including the state of Palestine, Israel.
And just to make sure there was no misunderstanding,
We totally and absolutely renounce all forms of terrorism. All forms of terrorism, including individual, group, and the state terrorism. I ask you to kindly quote me. We want peace. We want peace.
Arafat confirmed that Swedish intermediaries had helped negotiate with the United States the form of words required to meet American conditions. He refused to comment on the speech here today by U.S. Ambassador Vernon Walters, who expressed American impatience with both the PLO and Israel.
We must tell them that we are tired of this conflict and tired of their unwillingness to make fair compromises.
Tonight, Arafat seems to believe he has gone as far as he can go and that he has now fully met the American conditions. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Geneva.
Now, the official announcement, as I say, is expected live at the State Department at any moment now, and standing by at the State Department is our State Department correspondent, Wyatt Andrews. Wyatt?
Good evening, Dan. We expect Secretary of State Shultz at any moment to come to the briefing room here, as you just mentioned, to officially announce, as we have been told, a new dialogue with the PLO. We do not have word as to whether the United States will recognize the PLO, but keep in mind the U.S. has never recognized the PLO, and except for Beirut, has not talked to the PLO since 1975. Now I'm told Secretary of State George Shultz.
Today issued a statement in which it accepted UN Security Council resolutions 242 and 338, recognized Israel's right to exist in peace and security, and renounced terrorism. As a result, the United States is prepared for a substantive dialogue with PLO representatives. I am designating our ambassador to Tunisia as the only authorized channel for that dialogue. The objective of the United States remains, as always, a comprehensive peace in the Middle East. In that light, I view this development as one more step toward the beginning of direct negotiations between the parties, which alone can lead to such a peace. Nothing here may be taken to imply an acceptance or recognition by the United States of an independent Palestinian state. The position of the U.S. is that the status of the West Bank and Gaza cannot be determined by unilateral acts of either side, but only through a process of negotiations. The United States does not recognize the declaration of an independent Palestinian state. It is also important to emphasize that the United States' commitment to the security of Israel remains unflinching.
Mr. Secretary, what was it today that changed your mind?
I didn't change my mind. They changed they made their statement clear so that it doesn't have the ambiguities in it that earlier statements had, which tended to allow various people to give different interpretations of what was meant.
What was different about it today?
It was clear. It was not encumbered.
Mr. Secretary, what about the PLO's record, which only 2 weeks ago you described as a terrorism record? You called Arafat an accomplice or an accessory to terrorism. You denied him a visa. Are you expunging the PLO record and saying let bygones be bygones?
No, when we have our dialogue, you can be sure that the first item of business on our agenda in that dialogue will be the subject of terrorism. And we'll make it clear that our position about the importance of the renunciation of terrorism is central.
Well, what can a dialogue?
Secretary of State George Shultz live at the State Department with an announcement that certainly will be tomorrow's headline. That is that the United States now will begin an official dialogue with the Palestine Liberation Organization. Standing by at the White House to tell us what he has learned about this bombshell development is our White House correspondent, Bill Plant. Bill, this is a reversal of long-standing policy, and as a matter of fact, Secretary of State Shultz didn't look like he was all that overjoyed to be making this announcement.
Well, Dan, today, when the White House learned that Arafat had gone the extra mile in his news conference, said what he did not say in his speech before the UN the day before, the action came pretty quickly in late afternoon and early evening here. The president, we are told, took the initiative of moving that extra step since Arafat had done so. The president's statement put out just a few moments ago recognizes that Arafat has accepted resolutions 242 and 338, recognized the existence of the State of Israel, and denounced terrorism. And so Mr. Reagan's statement goes on to say these have been our conditions for a substantive dialogue, and he says they have been met. Now, the key phrase here, I think, is that these are the president's words again in a written statement, this represents a serious evolution of Palestinian thinking toward, and here are the key words, realistic and pragmatic positions.
Thanks, Bill. With us at our CBS News headquarters here in New York is our CBS News consultant, Dr. Fuad Ajami of Johns Hopkins University. Thanks for coming in on such short notice, Professor. Let's go back for what television calls the wide shot. Okay. For those who have not followed this story all that closely, why is this so important and why should they care?
Well, there has been a ban, an American ban on talking to the PLO. This ban has been in existence now for 13 years. It was an agreement that Secretary of State Kissinger had concluded in 1975. For 13 years, the Americans didn't talk to the PLO. There has always been, if you will, these conditions have been set, that we will not talk to the PLO so long as the PLO does not renounce terror, does not recognize Israel, and does not accept relevant UN resolutions. The expectations, I think, in the US was that Arafat would not be able to fulfill this, and that the Reagan administration would be able to exit with Arafat never having come through. Well, they have been cornered. Arafat has come through. He went the extra mile, and now we will see what American foreign policy will do with this.
Arafat was denied the visa to the UN. Secretary of State Shultz made that decision. How did that fit into this, or does it?
Well, this is the problem for Secretary of State Shultz. A couple of weeks ago, you deny the man a visa because he's an accessory to terror. Then you say now he has met all the conditions we want for an official dialogue between America and the PLO. Well, you can say, okay, we're not going to recognize the PLO, that this does not amount to recognition. That for now, we have now decided, the American policy is, that Arafat is a player, that he has met the minimum condition. Arafat, remember, has always said that he will do all these things at the end of the road, that this is his last trump card. Now he has matured, he has become a little smarter, and he now knows that all these things that he has to do, he has to pay at the beginning, that this is really his admission ticket to the world of diplomacy, that this is what he has to do if he really is to engage in a dialogue with the U.S.
Dr. Fuad Ajami, thanks.
Thank you.
Now, still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, more about this breaking, developing PLO story and the other news of the day, so stay here with us.
That'll be a charge.
We interrupt this purchase for a reminder.
Don't forget, Santa.
'Tis the season to be choosy.
La, 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 la.
That's it.
So choose the card that actually pays you cash back for every charge. The Discover card.
That's a great idea.
You sure know how to pick 'em.
It pays to Discover, the card that pays you back.
Honey, great news. I don't need surgery for my hemorrhoids. The doctor said they're not that serious.
Well, what did he say?
He told me to eat right, get some exercise, and when they act up, use Preparation H.
Thousands of doctors distribute this hemorrhoidal care guide. It advises a fiber-rich diet, exercise, and for flare-ups, try Preparation H for effective therapy against hemorrhoidal symptoms.
Aren't you glad you didn't need surgery?
Doctor recommended Preparation H.
If you love lots of shrimp, Red Lobster is going to make you very happy. Introducing the Shrimp Spectacular Platter, just $7.95. 4 ways to love shrimp, all on one plate. Crispy fried, spicy Cajun popcorn, zesty lemon pepper, and announcing our delicious new grilled shrimp. That's our Shrimp Spectacular Platter, just $7.95. Kid shrimp, $1.95. It's spectacular, now at Red Lobster. And for the holidays, call for party platters to go, ready in just 1 hour.
We hope to have reaction from Israel and Geneva about this statement tonight that the United States will open a dialogue with the PLO before this broadcast is over. In the meantime, other news. The U.S. government today reported that this country's trade deficit dropped 3.1% for the month of October. That narrowed the monthly gap between what the United States sold to other nations and what we bought from them to about $10 1/3 billion. In another report, the Federal Reserve Board said the operating rate at U.S. factories, mines, and utilities jumped to 84.2% for the month of November, and that's the highest rate in 9 years. It's likely to increase worries about possible inflation. President-elect George Bush today named U.S. Trade Representative Clayton Yater to be U.S. Agriculture Secretary, the 5th time he's reached back into President Reagan's ranks to fill a key position. In recent months, Yater has been trying to get foreign governments to end trade barriers on U.S. goods. Also today, President-elect Bush said he doubts he'll have proposals ready when nuclear arms control talks with the Soviets resume in February. He also said he has no idea how he will come up with the estimated billions it will cost to clean up and ensure safety at U.S. nuclear defense plants. Amid the increasing concern over safety at the nation's nuclear defense plants, now there's trouble stirring up the dust at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal outside Denver. CBS News reporter James Hattori says nearby residents are holding their breath and worrying.
For 40 years, the Rocky Mountain Arsenal was a dumping ground for some of the most toxic chemicals known to man. Today, the Army is spending $45 million to begin a cleanup. It's also unearthing a sickening smell.
Stinks, you know, it's gross. It gets in your throat and gets in your tongue. Your eyes start watering.
I don't think that there's any question that certain people have a sensitivity or a reaction to the odor.
You fear that you're going to die because eventually this is going to catch up with you.
Hundreds of families live near the arsenal, just 10 miles north of downtown Denver. Pesticide and nerve gas byproducts were dumped in this basin by the Army and Shell Oil starting in the 1940s.
We're just kind of like guinea pigs out here sitting waiting for something to happen.
How are they going to guarantee that this hasn't affected us?
Air samplers on the arsenal have detected the presence of at least a half-dozen cancer-causing chemicals at low concentrations. Officials say under the worst circumstances, nearby residents could face the added cancer risk of 1 in 100,000, well below federal standards.
We don't think that there's a long-term health impact to the best of our knowledge.
Excavation at the basin should be finished next month. The toxins stabilized in tanks and buried between layers of plastic. But this phase of the cleanup is just a band-aid on a problem so immense it will take a dozen years and as much as $2 billion to fix. Because the smell may go away, but the waste will not. James Hattori, CBS News, Denver.
A draft report by the government's General Accounting Office says it will cost at least $85 billion in the next decade to restore the financial footing of the nation's troubled savings and loan industry. The GAO recommended the Federal Savings and Loan Insurance Corporation move quickly to put insolvent thrifts into receivership. Failure to do so, the GAO says, resulted in $7.5 billion in savings and loan association losses this year alone. A week after that disastrous earthquake in Soviet Armenia, bodies are still being found under the rubble, adding to the death toll now officially estimated at 55,000. In some cases, officials have decided that more searching is all but hopeless. The worst enemy for the survivors is the weather, snow and killing, numbing cold that are hampering the distribution of food and medicine. More snow and high winds, unfortunately, are in the forecast. For untold thousands, the only shelter are the ruins of their homes surrounded by memories.
It takes time to get your gal to see the light. It takes time. It isn't always love inside. From the first little glance till she's ready for romance. Remember, little man, it takes time. It takes time to make the coffee percolate. It takes time to get your gal to set the date. From the first moonlit walk till you get the baby talk.
The Elegance Collection from Citizen.
Yeah.
I carry keys, I carry lipstick, I carry Metaprin, because you never know which you might need.
Hey, Metaprin. Oh, I had this real bad backache, and I asked the doctor. He said take Metaprin.
Well, I don't like taking pain relievers, but sometimes you need them, and Metaprin works best for me.
Metaprin's made for tough pain because it's made with ibuprofen, the same medicine as in Motrin, and nothing's proven faster.
It really helps my arthritis.
If I get a headache, it's Metaprin for me.
I bet they could use some Metaprin.
When the pain gets tough, get Metaprin.
Where can you find fleece activewear for intense workouts? Two-piece sets for guys, mix and match for gals, durable for those strenuous activities, in lots of styles for families on the go. All fleece wear, all sizes, 25% off. Now, only at Sears.
There's only one place you'll find this 73-piece Craftsman Mechanics tool set, all for only $59.99. It's made in America and backed by a warranty that lasts forever. Find it now, only at Sears.
Partly by satellite, partly by wire, this is live reactions now to the announcement made earlier this evening by Secretary of State George Shultz that the United States is reversing its long-standing policy of not having any dialogue with the Palestine Liberation Organization and is now going to do so. Tom Fenton, our CBS News chief European correspondent, is in Geneva now, where Yassar Arafat today issued that clarifying statement, Tom, that apparently cleared away President Reagan's last doubts about opening the dialogue. At least it's still unclear whether they cleared away all of Secretary Shultz's doubts.
Well, indeed, parts of the statement, Dan, sounded as if it had been written by the State Department itself. It was certainly as clear and as unambiguous a statement as the PLO could make, that it accepts the state of Israel and that it renounces terrorism in all its forms.
Now, there's every indication that the United States either wrote the statement for Arafat or he agreed to a statement very close to what we wanted him to say. How about Israel? What do we know about the negotiations with the Israelis to get this movement? I think that, unfortunately, we lost some communication with Tom Fenton. That's the way it goes sometimes with live television. Let's go to Israel now and see if we can speak with our veteran CBS News correspondent in Israel, Bob Simon. Bob, the reaction in Israel, and is it true that the Israelis signed off on this reluctantly and with some reservations, but signed off on it?
Dan, the Israelis did not sign off on this at all. It is a shock here. It's an earthquake. It is now 10 to 2 in the morning, so nobody's around for comment. But when the cabinet met today, Prime Minister Shamir refused to believe that the Americans were going to do that. Apparently, he was the only one. Other cabinet members said it's only a matter of time. George Shultz wants to do that. He's going to do it. It is, in a way, a shock, but not a major surprise. The Israelis expected this to happen yesterday when Arafat did not utter the magic words in Geneva of recognizing Israel explicitly and renouncing terrorism. The Israelis thought they were off the hook. But then today, they're back on the hook, and this is the victory that the PLO has been aiming at all year. It is a major defeat for Israel. It could affect the coalition negotiations. In times of emergency, Israel tends to opt for a broad-based coalition. I think this is now very likely. It will certainly affect the Palestinian Intifada. The Palestinians, when they wake up in the morning and hear this, are going to be exuberant. The Israelis, until now, have been alone in a corner with the United States. Now, all of a sudden, the Americans have left them. They will feel that the whole world is against them. It will not be a pleasant situation here.
Bobby, is this like, and I understand that it's 2 o'clock in the morning there, and you can't just pick up the phone and talk to everybody who counts in the Israeli government, going to be read as, look, President Reagan and George Shultz are near the end of their term. They don't have to be around to pick up the consequences of this, and so they took one last big, bold gamble, hoping for a place in the history books with it.
I've just spoken to somebody very close to the Israeli cabinet, Dan, and the interpretation here is that this is a decision taken by the old administration and the new. The Israelis do not hope that it will be any different when the new administration takes office.
Bob Simon in Israel, thank you very much. And our CBS Evening News will continue after these messages. In a shocking development, certainly shocking for Israel tonight, standing by at the State Department, Wyatt Andrews. Wyatt, Bob Simon reports from Israel that the Israelis will see this as bad news and in a certain sense an abandonment, at least that they didn't sign off on it. Is that what you get from the State Department?
Yes, Dan, and also from Israel. The Israeli embassy here in Washington is awake, unlike over there in Tel Aviv, and they have said they regret this decision and point out that this does not necessarily mean peace. Now, on that last point, they are right. These are just talks with between anyone from the PLO with the Tunisian ambassador, the American ambassador to Tunis. We should also point out that the U.S. has put the PLO on notice that the first act of terrorism, all bets are off. So this is a breakthrough, but it doesn't mean that peace is breaking out.
Split between the White House and the State Department, or everybody, at least in those two places, in step? Schultz wanted to do this or didn't want to do it?
Dan did want to do it. The U.S. laid out the conditions for the PLO. Arafat set them today. They had no choice but to say yes to Arafat.
Wyatt Andrews at the State Department, thanks. Now, the Israeli ambassador to the United States has been kind enough to come into our bureau in Washington, Moshe Arad. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming in. You've been listening to what we've been reporting here. Are we in error on anything so far as you know? And what is the Israeli reaction to this?
Disappointed, and we regret the United States' decision to establish now contacts with the PLO. We don't view it as a step that will bring the peace process any closer or any further. And obviously, we feel very disappointed.
Any doubt in your mind that the incoming administration, the new George Bush administration, will carry on this change in U.S. policy?
I have no reason and no information on which I can speculate now, but I have to assume it that this is a U.S. policy as from today.
What is the immediate danger to Israel of this decision, or does it pose any immediate danger?
The danger which poses is that the perception in the Arab world might be that here, at last, someone has succeeded to draw a wedge between Israel and the United States. I say this is a danger because I don't regard this as a reality. I feel that the friendship and the relationship between the United States and Israel is strong enough to accept even a blow like this one. But the fact is that perceptions in the Arab world, in the Middle East, are quite different, and there is some danger in the fact that the Arab world might read into it something which is not there.
We have only a few seconds left, Mr. Ambassador. Do you expect this to cause trouble on the West Bank immediately?
I assume that the reaction would be further violence and to show and more of it in the days to come. But I'm confident in our capacity also to keep this under control.
Ambassador Moshe Arad, thank you very much in Washington. That's tonight's CBS Evening News. Dan Rather, there'll be more about this development on your late local news. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Hello, darling. My gift philosophy is nothing.
I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan. Tomorrow, Peter Allen joins us. He's in a new Broadway play.
Also, more with Paul Simon tomorrow on CBS This Morning.
This is CBS.
His friend captured.